Welcome to the first of a short series of training videos on some significant upcoming enhancements to WebSmart, which will be available to your districts on Monday, January 23rd. Even though this will not take place until then, we would like to take this opportunity to provide you with these training videos in advance so that you may take some time to review these changes at your convenience. However, if you do have any questions about the changes, we will be offering live webinar sessions on January 17th at 10 o'clock a.m., January 18th at 1 o'clock p.m., and on January 19th at 4 o'clock p.m. for a brief question and answer session. At that time, please feel free to call into the webinar and ask any questions. By the way, this is Melissa Davis, and as part of the WebSmart support team, I am happy to host this series of events. WebSmart has restructured purchasing and AP to help accommodate users in performing more efficiently in their daily purchasing, receiving, and billing responsibilities. In this video, we will be discussing the new layout of the requisition and purchase order screens, which not only allows the user to see the status of the approval process, along with the history of transactions, but also allows the user to save a requisition before it is submitted for approval. In video 2, we will be discussing the upcoming changes in the processing of approving requisitions and converting them to purchase orders from an approver's perspective, including the ability to add a signature to the approved purchase order. In video 3, we will be discussing the new receiving module, which will highlight the new way to pay a bill that is associated to a purchase order, including the ability to create bills for multiple invoices from one screen. And in video 4, we will be discussing the new feature which allows you to merge duplicate vendors. For this first training exercise, I'm going to briefly highlight the changes from a user's perspective when creating a requisition. Let's begin by looking at the layout of the requisition screen. First of all, notice that the page loads with the filter submitted for review query. This option loads all of the user's requisitions that have been submitted for review. If you select the drop-down box, the user will be able to select other options. If you the unsubmitted filter loads all requisitions created by the user's login that have not been submitted to administration for review. These requisitions are saved and visible only to the creator. The under review filter loads all requisitions created by the user's login that have not been approved nor converted into purchase orders. The rejected filter loads all requisitions created by the user's login that have been rejected by authorized personnel. The authorized personnel will post rejected comments to the requisition. Therefore, if applicable, the requester at this point can select to edit the requisition to make the required changes and resubmit. The approved less than or equal to 30 days filter loads all requisitions created by the user's login that have been approved and converted into a purchase order within the last 30 days. The approved less than or equal to 60 days filter loads all requisitions created by the user's login that have been approved and converted into a purchase order within the last 60 days. The approved less than or equal to 90-day filter loads all requisitions created by the user's login that have been approved and converted into a purchase order within the last 90 days. The submitted for review filter loads all requisitions created by the user's login. And as before, the user still has the ability to search for a specific requisition by assigning the filter criteria. Let's click back on Submitted for Review. Also notice that at a glance, you can now see the vendor name directly from the requisition screen instead of just the title of the requisition. Now let's create a requisition and look at the actual layout of the requisition itself. Select Create Requisition. Enter a descriptive title for the requisition that should allow the approver and creator the ability to identify the purpose of the requisition. The system will now allow duplicate titles or descriptions. You do not have to enter the estimated delivery date. This is an optional field and rarely used unless you are tracking dates of delivery of purchased items. Once the requisition is created, the system will default to the current date if the field is left blank. The transaction date defaults to the current date, which is the date the items are being requested. The tracking number, quote number, and bid number are all optional fields, which you can skip over if none of these apply to the requisitions. However, if these fields are used, they will be included on the purchase order. This next field is a new feature that allows the user to select the status of the requisition as either Submit for Review, which automatically submits the requisition to administration for the review and approval process, or Unsubmitted, which saves the requisition and places it in the Unsubmitted filter, which we discussed earlier. For this example, we are going to select Submit for Review. Enter the vendor by selecting the first few names of the vendor name, and the list will begin to populate. And then you select the appropriate vendor. For accuracy, when selecting the appropriate vendor, the user will now be able to see the vendor's address. Enter any purchasing comments. These will appear on the original purchase order, and these are used to communicate information directly to the vendor. The requester will default to the user unless the user, such as the secretary or administrative user, has security rights to select specific users, and in that case, select the name of the requester in the drop menu. Enter the Ship To facility in the drop menu. Just as a note, the Ship To facilities are controlled by administration. If you do not know the Ship To facilities available to you, you can enter an asterisk, which is a wildcard symbol instructing the system to search for all available facilities. The Bill To address will default to the same as the Ship To address. However, if you need to change the Bill To address, you can enter the Bill To facility in the drop menu. Again, the Bill To facilities are controlled by administration, and if you do not know the Ship To facilities available to you, again, you can enter the asterisk, which is a wildcard symbol instructing the system to search for all available facilities. Select or enter the number of items requested by entering the number of items, or you can hit your down arrow key one time on your keyboard and the system will automatically generate 2 line items. If you do not need a second line item, you can disregard it, because once the requisition is actually created, any blank lines will appear from the requisition. This is also a new feature. Go ahead and enter item number and a description. Enter the quantity of the items and the price, and when you tab, the extended price will populate according to the quantity and price. A new feature to the requisition screen is the ability to enter split coding on an item. If you need to allocate the amount of the item to multiple account codes, select the Add Coding option, which will generate another line to enter split coding accounts and amounts. And you can enter 420, 11, 63.99. Enter the amount allocated to that specific account. If you are only using one account code, the amount will default to the total of the extended price amount, so you only need to change it if you are split coding an item. If you need to delete the allocation, you can select the delete icon, and you can add and enter additional items as necessary the same way. At this time, we're going to go ahead and select Create to submit the requisition for approval. As you'll see, once the requisition is created, the layout is significantly different than the layout of the current requisitions. Across the top of the requisition, notice the 3 tabs: Requisition, Signatures, and History. Each of these tabs contains important information to the user when researching the status of a requisition in the approval process. The Requisition tab shows the information entered into the requisition. The Signatures tab allows the requisition creator to add or edit justification comments if necessary, and allows the requisition creator to see the signatures on the requisition. and if the requisition has been approved or if it's still unsigned. The History tab shows a list of historical data. Anytime a change is made to the requisition, the date timestamp will indicate when the document was changed. Now let's select Return to List to return to the main requisition screen. Now let's move on to viewing the purchase orders. Depending on the user's access, the purchase order can be viewed, edited, and/or deleted or liquidated from a couple of sources. From here, since we're talking about the requisitions access, we're going to talk about this option is usually a setup for users creating requisitions only and do not work in the accounting office. So we're going to select the approved less than or greater than 30 days, which is going to bring us up all the purchase orders that have been approved in that time frame. Select the printer icon under the actions to open the purchase order in PDF. And let's scroll all the way down to the bottom of the document and notice the signatures are now displayed on the purchase order. Now, if you have access to purchase orders and you go to Finance, Purchasing and AP, oh, that's right, we need to log out first. And then we're just going to log back into Administrator so I can show you the other login. For example, if you have an accounting personnel that needs to look at a purchase order, you can go to Finance, Purchasing and AP, Purchasing and Purchase Orders. Here we're going to select the printer icon to open the purchase order in a PDF format. When selecting to print the purchase order, you will be prompted with a text box asking to show coding on a purchase order. Select OK to print the purchase order with the coding. This would be an example of a copy you would keep in your accounting records. And we'll close that out. The next example is we're going to select the cancel to print the purchase order without the coding. And this would be an example of a copy you may wish to send to the vendor. And we can close that. As similar to before, select the edit icon to review and/or edit any of the purchase order. And then select the delete icon if you need to delete or liquidate the purchase order. This concludes the training session on the new features coming soon on requisitions. Thank you for taking time to review these upcoming changes to our software. We hope you will find it beneficial to you and your staff. Please continue to review the other videos to view more upcoming features, and be sure to register for one of the Q&A sessions if you have any questions. Thank you.